We're going to do a Vipashyana practice, applying mindfulness. Again, we'll go through each one of those four elements, the body, the feelings, mind, phenomena, but this time working on this insight into suffering. So remember here, suffering is a translation of the Sanskrit term dukkha. And remember, it's describing the human condition. And so then we have the dukkha of suffering, and here the word suffering is referring to our unpleasant experiences. So of course that's part of the human condition. And then there is the dukkha of change, referring to our pleasant experiences. So of course they're part of the human condition, but what we tend to do is we tend to equate pleasant experiences with happiness. We grasp onto pleasant experiences hoping that they're going to fulfill us and satisfy us. But underlying both our pleasant and unpleasant experiences, of course, there is all-pervasive dukkha. All-pervasive means that our life is pervaded by the potential for suffering to arise. No matter where we go, no matter where we are, there's always a potential for suffering to arise in our life. That's all-pervasive. So that's the deepest understanding of the word dukkha. And why is that there is, of course, because our mind is contaminated by the mental afflictions. So we are coming to this insight into dukkha, because at the moment it seems like our unpleasant experiences are suffering, and it seems like our pleasant experiences are happiness. And we're really trying to overcome that. Particularly, what we're going to focus on in this meditation is that grasping onto pleasant experiences as happiness. So to read a little bit more about this, I'd like to read from this Minding Closely book from Alan Wallace again on these 4 applications of mindfulness. This is on page 66. He says the following. The second question is quite fascinating. Is it genuine happiness or unsatisfying? What are the true causes of happiness and suffering? When we identify phenomena as the source of our happiness, a person, situation, organisation, job, belief system, scripture, or any appearance to the mind, we think, it feels good to have this source of happiness. All will be well if I just hold on to it. Is this phenomenon by its nature an actual source of happiness, security and fulfillment, or is it not? Likewise, when we identify some object or appearance to the mind as the source of our dissatisfaction, we think, I can't tolerate this situation. If only the source of my distress would go away, I'd be happy. Look again. Is this actually the source of unhappiness? What is the reality of dukkha? In fathoming the true nature of dukkha, the translation of the term is important. It's easy to misunderstand something I heard in a college course on Buddhism, which was that the Buddha was pessimistic. He thought everything was suffering. Understanding this requires some finesse. What the Buddha actually said was that as long as our minds are dominated by mental afflictions, acting like carriers of a malignant virus, spreading delusion, craving and hostility, along with myriad derivative mental afflictions such as envy and arrogance that corrupt and distort every experience, then nothing will be satisfying. This is why I define dukkha as dissatisfaction. We have all known various kinds of pleasure aroused by sensory and mental stimuli. When such a feeling occurs, inspect it carefully by probing into its nature with interest, but without feeding it. Maintain a high level of attentiveness, remaining focused but without superimposing judgments or preferences. Is this feeling an intrinsically pleasurable one by its own nature? Does it maintain its integrity, remaining vivid the more carefully it is scrutinised, or does it begin to dissolve under investigation? Finding some person, place or thing to be truly satisfying, you may think, bullseye, I've tapped into the wellspring of true happiness. If so, according to the Buddhist analysis, every time you return to that source, it should deliver satisfaction. If it is an actual source of happiness, it should invariably deliver happiness, 15 times a day or 20 hours non-stop. Can you think of any appearance, person, object or activity that consistently yields such happiness, a true source of happiness? Or do unsatisfying qualities always crop up over time? So that's what we're going to do now, is we're going to again apply mindfulness, and we're going to move through each one of these four. We're going to start with the body, then to feelings, which again is pleasant, unpleasant, neutral experiences, then the mind, thoughts, emotions and so forth, and then phenomena, whatever is appearing to the mind. And ask on the basis of the question, is what I am experiencing in the nature of happiness? So that's the question we're going to use to observe.
What's the question?
Is what I am experiencing in the nature of happiness? Meaning, as Almol said, if it's in the nature of happiness, if we were to experience that for 10 hours straight, we would be 10 hours straight happy. Because it's happiness. And is every time we experience it, are we happy? If it's in the nature of happiness, it would mean every time we experience it, we must be happy. And if we experienced it for 10 hours straight, we'd be happy for 10 hours straight. Because it's in the nature of happiness. That's what we're looking for.
So here we do apply reasoning?
No, you look to see that on the basis of the question. I mean, you have that, but yes, you look at that experience and you really see, is it really in the nature of happiness? And just really look at that.
So it's an analytical.
Sorry?
It's an analytical meditation.
No, we're just looking on the basis of the question, and the question is it in the nature of happiness? And if you think it is, then just look at it and think, well, okay, every time I experience that, do I have happiness? And if I experience that for 10 hours straight, would I be 10 hours straight happy? But that's the question. Okay, so there is, I mean, yes, in that sense, but we're not, yes, but we're looking at the experience itself, yes.
Before, when you said look closely at the body, so when I look closely, then I see in my mind eye, I see the hair growing, I see the stain of the skin falling, but this is a matter of analytical.
Right, but that in terms of impermanence, That in terms of impermanence is what's called coarse impermanence. That's over a longer period of time. With this, what we were doing before, the subtle impermanence is just in that moment. We're not thinking, oh, that there over the next days or weeks will change and change. That's a valid meditation, but that wasn't what we were doing previously.
So
Previously, what we were doing was just observing directly, and we can apply the same here. If there's something pleasant that comes up, does it stay pleasant? Keep watching it. Does it stay in nature of happiness? Does it stay like that? So we can do that, or we can do a little bit like you did, look at the bigger picture. So you can do both.
Something pleasant, unpleasant picture when I watch body, mind, and phenomena.
Yeah, but in particular, I mean, we're really aiming at this one, the pleasant ones. Because the really the one of it, I mean, they're all, of course, insights, but the one we're really focusing on here is this, is because we tend to feel pleasure is happiness, and we're trying to hold on to that. So that's what we're looking at here, is our pleasant experiences in the nature of happiness. That's what we're investigating in this meditation.
My question is about the last meditation we did. It really felt like you can see the impermanence in everything,
Right.
but then it kind of enhanced the feeling of like a self that is kind of observing the change.
Okay.
So, and then also the question arises, like same as you said, like there can only be big compared to small. Isn't there can only be change from a perspective of unchanging?
The concept. Yeah, the concept change can only be with respect to the concept unchanging.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean there necessarily are things which are unchanging.
So
We're
is
talking about concepts here.
yeah, like a self that is in a way unchanging to observe the changes that.
You lost me now. Sorry.
So
So you have to have an unchanging thing to observe changing things?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
yeah.
How can an unchanging thing observe? Isn't the act of observation change?
I experientially not. That's what like that's the feeling that there is an unchanging self that's kind of observing.
Okay, so that's what we're going to be looking at tomorrow morning. Is there such a self? I mean, it seems like everything, I mean, that's what we're doing here. Superficially, it seems like this cup is not changing. It superficially seems like pleasure is happiness. Superficially seems like there's a stable self here that's not really changing. But the question is that really the case? And that's what Vipashyana practice is all about, is to look very closely to see whether that's really the case or not. And so yes, that's what we're going to do tomorrow morning, is this self that really seems to be the one common thing to all this, is that really there? That's tomorrow morning's meditation.
I have a question about the feelings. In the previous meditation, I felt like I'm forcing myself to have some kind of feeling. Like the unpleasant feeling was obvious, it's my legs, they're painful. And the pleasant feeling, then I did something similar to what we did when we noticed the body. So I can massage my legs, my feet when thinking, and I wasn't sure, I was creating pleasant, unpleasant. I didn't allow it to come to me, so I'm not really sure what does it mean.
So the feelings, of course, is all three. It's pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. And feelings is mental and sensory. So this is the same word as sensations. So we're both looking in the physical and the mental. Both is feelings. So if you have unpleasant sensations in the leg, or you have an unpleasant thought in the mind, same. That's feeling.
But sometimes I just have thoughts. I don't. I
Then they're
divide
neutral.
it to pleasant and unpleasant.
Or neutral. So we're looking at those as well. Neutral, pleasant, unpleasant. So everything comes in that category. Everything that appears is either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. So therefore, everything that appears is to be investigated in the second one. But in particular, the pleasant and unpleasant, because they're the ones that get us into trouble. But we're looking at all three in that practice when we're observing feelings. Particularly here in this one, we're going to be focusing on the pleasant. So particularly look at all pleasant, unpleasant and neutral, but if any pleasant ones come up, then really look closely.
But to create it?
Well, you could do that if you wanted to.
Like I created it so I will have something to watch.
You can do that if you want.
Definitely pleasant or unpleasant, because the neutral is just there, like you say.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to create it, to look at it, that's fine. That's fine. Sure. You can do that. Okay. Let's do the
So
practice.
I choose how much is suffering.
Sorry?
I choose how much is suffering. How much is suffering? Or,
What are you saying? Sorry?
I mean, when I do the meditation,
Right.
suffering pleasant and pleasant the second.
The second one, yes.
So I choose the measure of suffering,
The measure.
Nature.
the measure,
Nature.
Measure.
the value, how much is the suffering?
Would you like to ask the deeper?
מה העוצמה של pleasant, unpleasant ו-natural. אני בוחר את שלושתם, ואז אם אני לא מגיע, אם אני בוחר של unpleasant, אני יכול לשחק בעוצמה של הסופרים.
אבל אם אנחנו יכולים לשלוט בזה לדעתי. אם אנחנו יכולים לשלוט,
כן?
if we can control our suffering or pleasant experience. Control. Like if we can turn it to be stronger or that's the thing.
Sorry?
No, you don't play with the strength of the feeling. You just watch it.
Yeah.
And that's it.
We're not, in this practice, we're not trying to control anything. We're just observing and seeing what is there and what is its nature. Is it really suffering? Is it really happiness? That's what we're looking at. We're not trying to control or fix anything here. We're just, if something unpleasant comes up, is that in the nature of suffering? If something pleasant comes up, is that in the nature of happiness? That's what we're really just observing in this practice, that's all.
But I mean in daily life.
Yeah, and if we have this insight, if we do this, then we'll come to see that unpleasant experiences are not in the nature of suffering, pleasant experiences are not in the nature of happiness, which means that in daily life, if we have an unpleasant experience, we won't have aversion, which means we won't create suffering. And if we have a pleasant experience, we won't generate attachment, which means we'll enjoy it fully. That's the result of this meditation. But the meditation itself is just to observe. Good. Very good. Setting the body into a state of relaxation, stillness, and vigilance. come to rest in the present moment. Simply becoming aware of the sensations of the breath. And again, we can begin our Vipashyana practice by applying mindfulness to the body. So observing the field of the body on the basis of the question, is there anything experienced within the body that is in the nature of happiness? So look closely, particularly at any pleasant sensations in the body. And now apply mindfulness to feelings. That is pleasant, unpleasant and neutral feelings. And again, on the basis of the question, are any of these feelings in the nature of happiness? Again, paying very close attention to any pleasant experiences that arise.